Well, we have different answers to different parts of how we set up the culture to the community. When it came to economics, we were using Twin Oaks as a model. Kat Kincaid had written her book, A Walden 2 Experiment. By that time, it came out in 1972. In fact, that was an important piece of literature to get me on the path to considering intentional communities and a lifestyle option. That book came out and was excerpted in, I think it was the February issue in 1973 of Psychology Today. And I ran into that in a public library, and that really gelled for me. Oh, this could be a lifestyle that would give me that thing that I didn't have after leaving college. I was living in D.C., working with the federal government, and then I went on a field trip with a Unitarian church group. I wasn't part of that church group, but I knew people in it, and they wanted to do a trip to Twin Oaks, which is 2 miles south of D.C., as part to explore the extent to which they were an intentional community as a church group or a community. So I tagged along on a day trip and visited there, and it all helped reinforce for me my interest in that kind of life. They were doing income sharing. That made a lot of sense to me. It wasn't something I'd had any experience with or had explored, and so that was that idea sold to the two couples that got started. So we started with income sharing, and while that wasn't a deeply examined assumption when we got started, we all agreed to it, and it's worked well enough for me and everyone that's lived at Sandhill that we've never seriously questioned it since then. So in some ways it was just emulating a model that was already out there and was inspirational, and we've continued it because it's worked. Now, when it came down to the economics, we didn't have any clue at all when we bought the land how we would make money. We had enough savings to buy the land outright and then to also renovate a farmhouse on the property the first summer so that we had enough housing that winter for the two couples, and re-roofed the house, rewired it, all those kinds of things. But we had no clue really how we were going to make money. We did a little part-time work for the neighbors. That wasn't very remunerative, but it got us more connected in the local town. It was only by degrees that we got involved in agriculture, and then there were, in the early years, one member at a time would occasionally hold a job. Sometimes it was teaching in the area. Somebody worked in the local planning agency for a time. These were jobs that might have lasted for several months. I don't know that any of them ever lasted longer than a year. So there was a little bit hit or miss doing that, either part-time things or filling in jobs for several months in a row before stepping back from them. Always the money then earned by the individuals went into the common treasury. Gradually we started making money through agriculture. We started farming, developed the community as an agricultural farm. We did our own gardening. We would sell surplus food. We would make food products. And the number one product for income agriculturally historically has been sorghum, which is a traditional sweetener in the Midwest and the South. We began in 1977, so that would have been 3 years after we moved there. And now about 1/3 of the community's income, it comes from that one crop of sorghum. So we started that fairly early, but that was still 3 years into it. When we got there, we didn't have an idea of what we were doing. So the economics that is the base and what the work would be has evolved over the years and was not at all clear at the outset. It wasn't part of the essential dream how we would do that. Now it's become important to us that we make our money in ways that are consistent with our values. So that doing it with food has been important because we believe in trying to steward the land in an environmentally sustainable way. That means we produce crops in such a way that we're not degrading the soil, but we're maintaining it or increasing its vitality for future generations. And we're able to do the sorghum and also our food production that way. So that feels very consistent with our core value. The other work now, today, I'd say 60% of the community's income comes from three things. One of it is two people in the community, I being one, and then another member at the community, do part-time work for the Fellowship for Intentional Community. We do administrative work for that network organization. I serve as the executive secretary, which is the main administrative function. Another person does the main order fulfillment and runs community bookshelf in our Missouri office. Both of those are part-time jobs. In addition, I do work as a process consultant, where I travel around the United States and help groups, essentially cooperative groups and nonprofits, about how to function better, how to get along better, how to have better meetings, how to solve problems well together, how to get more of the good parts and less of the bad ones. Then there's another member who does organic inspecting. He travels essentially throughout the Midwest, mostly farms, but also processing facilities, and he writes the reports upon which certification is based or denied, depending on how well they match up with the standards for that certifying organization. Now, those are two good examples of two people that do work away from the farm, not because we want to get away from the farm, that is, I travel to other groups and Stan does the organic inspecting, because we really like that work. And it's an extension of our basic values of trying to promote a cooperative lifestyle throughout the country, and one that's sustainable. So Stan is a farmer and he's the one who runs our farm at home. He grew up on a farm, and he is very excited about our sustainable values and how we do agriculture. Being an inspector of organic operations in different parts of the Midwest means he has the occasion to talk to people about their practices and help them become more sustainable too. So it's extending what we do at home to the people around us and in the area. Similarly for me, although the scope is a little bigger, that I work more nationally. In fact, a lot of my work is on the coasts rather than in the middle of the country. I'll go to wherever the work is, and I am taking what we're learning in intentional community about cooperative group dynamics and making that available to people. So it's the same kind of making available to others the product of what we learned. Now, those two aspects, I've talked a little bit about our economic arrangements and how we started with that that is, we had a model of income sharing but didn't know how we were going to make money at first. We very quickly, we've always had the model that we would be the kind of community where we all were participants in the decision making. That is, we didn't have a central leadership. It was every member would have a say in what we did. And we agreed at the outset that we would make decisions by consensus. Though we made that decision naively. It wasn't because any of us had any background in it or really know how to do it. There are many, many things at the outset of our community that we simply jumped into without knowing what we were doing. And then over time, we solved enough of the problems quickly enough that we survived them and got to the next level. So today we have a much clearer idea about what the social commitment is, the importance of working through issues as they come up, the importance of being available to each other emotionally, not just rationally, the importance of trying to create the best quality life we can for each member, as long as we're not violating the basic values of the community. Those kinds of things were not clear to us at the outset, and now they're central to who we are and how we screen people for a fit. So.